Let me ask you a question you may have never dared to answer honestly. Who are you when you stop being the one who always picks up the phone? Who's left when you stop rearranging your life just to be available for others? Because here's what no one tells you. Your constant presence doesn't make you more loved. It just makes you more used. Being always available feels like kindness, like loyalty, like love. But what if I told you that it's often a disguise? A role you've unconsciously played for years, not because people value you, but because they depend on your absence of boundaries. And the moment you withdraw, not with anger, not with drama, just with quiet self-respect, everything changes. Suddenly, those who once called you so caring now call you selfish. Those who once said, "You're always there for me now," say you've changed. And they're right. You have changed. You're no longer the default option, no longer the emotional crutch. You're no longer the one who shows up for everyone, because you've started showing up for yourself. This video is not just about relationships. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about boundaries, authenticity, and the brutal clarity that comes when you stop bending. Because only when you're no longer useful do you discover who truly loves you. Let's begin. You tell yourself just one more reply. It's 1:23 a.m. You're exhausted, but they're crying, or angry, or need to talk. So you stay. Again, you answer the phone. You say yes to the favor. You show up when no one else does. Even if you're falling apart inside, you put their pieces together. At first, it feels like love. It feels like connection. It feels like being a good person. But slowly, something in you starts to vanish. You didn't notice when it started. It's not like you planned to become the always available one. It just happened. You were kind. You were caring. And it felt good to be needed. But then, the more present you became for others, the more invisible you became to yourself. What began as generosity turned into a role, a script, a performance, a habit of being there for everyone, except yourself. And let's be honest, no one asked if you were okay, because you trained them not to. Need becomes identity. You weren't just helping people. You were being needed, and that gave you a reason to exist. There's something deeply intoxicating about being the one who's always there. People say, "You're such a good listener. You're always there when I need you. You're the only one who understands me." And inside you glow, because those words feel like love. But what they're really saying is, "I love how available you are for me." And here's the problem. When your value is tied to being useful, your humanity disappears. From person to tool, no one truly sees a tool. They just use it. And that's what you've become. Not a human with boundaries, needs, and feelings, but an instrument of convenience. You answer every late-night call. You solve every emotional crisis. You drive across the city at 2 a.m. to be there for someone who wouldn't cross the street for you. Why? Because somewhere along the way, you believed this lie. If I'm not useful, I won't be loved. Resentment grows in silence. You don't complain. You don't explode. You don't walk away. But the resentment is there, quiet, heavy, and corrosive. You listen to them rant for hours, but they don't know your pain. You celebrate their wins, but they miss your losses. You carry their world, while no one even asks about yours. And the worst part, you start blaming yourself for being tired. Why am I so emotionally drained? Why do I feel so invisible? Why do I feel alone, even when I'm surrounded by people? Here's why. Because you became a ghost in your own story. The mask of the good person. Psychologically, you're living out a persona, a role that feels safe. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive in society. In your case, the mask is the giver, the one who never asks, the one who never needs, the one who's always strong. But behind the mask is a suppressed shadow, a self you've denied. And that shadow whispers in the dark, I'm tired. I want to be seen too. The invisible transaction. Let's face it, even if you don't say it aloud, you want something in return. Not money, not favors, but recognition, appreciation, reciprocity. But people rarely give it. Why? Because you've trained them to expect your presence without cost. To them, you're free support. And here's the rule of human behavior. What is always available is rarely respected. Think about it. A friend who only texts when they need something. A family member who only shows up when they want help. A partner who praises your loyalty until you have a boundary. They don't love you. They love what you do for them. Being always there becomes your prison. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you reinforce the idea that your time, energy, and peace are disposable. You stop being a person. You become a service. And over time, people stop even thanking you. Because why thank the air you breathe? Why appreciate something that's always been there? You taught them you don't matter. That's the hard truth. Every time you canceled your plans to show up for someone, you taught them you weren't a priority. Every time you said it's fine when it wasn't, you taught them they could hurt you without consequence. Every time you dropped everything for their emergencies, you taught them you had no boundaries. And they listened, they learned, and now they expect it. The breaking point. Eventually something cracks. Maybe you stop replying right away. Maybe you say, I can't talk right now. Maybe you cancel plans to rest. Maybe you say no and mean it. And that's when the shift happens. Suddenly you're not so sweet anymore. You're distant. You've changed. You're acting cold. But what they're really saying is, you're no longer serving my emotional convenience. And that is the moment of truth. Why does this feel like betrayal? Because for years you've been playing a role. And the moment you break character, the audience turns on you. They weren't in love with the real you. They were in love with the version of you that didn't have needs. So when you start to reclaim your space, you're not being cruel, you're being real. And authenticity has a cost. From service to self, you can't keep showing up for everyone and expect to survive it. Eventually your soul will rebel. Your body will protest. Your heart will shut down. Because even the kindest heart needs protection. And that protection is boundaries. Let this truth settle in. The more you erased your needs, the more they believed you didn't have any. Being the always available one may win you temporary affection, but it costs you something deeper, your authenticity. It's time to unlearn the habit of proving your worth through sacrifice, because being loved shouldn't require exhaustion. It starts with the smallest rebellion. You don't text back right away. You let the phone ring. You say, I need a night to myself. And just like that, a quiet earthquake begins in your life. You didn't scream. You didn't fight. You didn't break anything. You simply stopped abandoning yourself. And in that silence, something powerful is born. Boundaries. What is a boundary? A boundary is not a wall. It's not a punishment. It's not rejection. It's simply this. Here's where I end and you begin. Boundaries are the invisible lines that protect your energy, your sanity, your self-respect. They say I love you, but I also love me, and I refuse to disappear to keep you comfortable. The myth of selfishness. Here's the first lie people will tell you when you set boundaries. You're being selfish. But what they mean is, you're no longer prioritizing me over yourself. There's a big difference between selfishness and self-respect. Selfishness says, only I matter. Self-respect says, I matter too. And that too, that small word, it's everything. Because when you've lived your life always being there for others, that little word feels like a revolution. Why people resist your boundaries. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries are the first to get offended by the presence of them. They're not used to hearing no. They're not used to being asked to wait. They're not used to you valuing your time because you trained them otherwise. And now that you're reclaiming your space, they panic. Not because you're hurting them, but because you're no longer available for their comfort. The mask slips. You'll be shocked at how fast the compliments disappear once you stop performing. The "you're so amazing" turns into "you're acting strange." The "I love how you're always there" becomes "you're distant lately." What's really happening? The mask is slipping, not yours, theirs. Your silence is exposing something deeper. They never loved you. They loved your service. And now that the service is closed, so is their affection. The guilt trap. When you start saying no, you'll feel guilt, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you've been conditioned to believe your value lies in pleasing others. You'll hear voices in your head. They'll be upset. They'll think I don't care. They'll leave me. Here's what you need to remember. Anyone who leaves because you respected yourself was never truly with you. They were with the version of you who erased herself for their comfort. This is the test. Boundaries don't push the right people away. They filter out the wrong ones. When you stop overgiving, some people will disappear. Let them. When you stop over-explaining, some people will misunderstand. Let them. When you stop being the emotional sponge, some people will call you cold. Let them. This is not the end of your relationships. This is the revelation of them. Jung's warning. The cost of persona. Carl Jung said that the persona, the mask we wear to function in society, eventually becomes a prison. And that prison feels safest to those who fear abandonment. So we play the role. We smile. We serve. We shrink. We sacrifice truth for acceptance. But the truth has a voice. And when you finally listen to it, the persona begins to crack. And what breaks first? False love. Transactional loyalty. Conditional friendship. That's not a loss. That's liberation. What does it feel like to set a boundary? It feels like saying, I don't have the energy for this right now. Turning your phone off after 10 p.m. Not picking up the phone to rescue someone from a problem they created. Declining an invitation without explaining. Telling someone I need space and not apologizing for it. At first it feels terrifying, but over time it feels like breathing. You realize the world didn't end. You didn't lose everyone. You just lost the illusion that you had to be everything to everyone. Their reaction is their reveal. Here's the truth that will hurt and then heal. People's reactions to your boundaries show you who they really are. A healthy person will say, I understand. Take your time. A selfish person will say, wow, you've changed. A controlling person will say, you're abandoning me. An emotionally mature person will say, thank you for being honest. So listen carefully, because when you stop bending, the truth bends toward you. You don't owe explanations for your peace. The most radical thing you can do is stop explaining your boundaries, not because you're being rude, but because your peace is not a debate. You don't owe anyone a paragraph for needing rest. You don't need to justify why you said no. You don't need to argue why your energy deserves protection. You are not available for guilt anymore. You are available for growth. The power of slow withdrawal. Here's something no one tells you. You don't need to cut people off to change your life. You just need to stop being instantly available. No dramatic speech. No burning bridges. Just soft boundaries. A pause before replying. A quiet evening without checking messages. A firm no when something drains you. A new habit of asking yourself, do I want to do this? Or do I feel obligated? That's how the shift begins. Your new energy sacred, not scattered. The old you gave energy out like candy. To anyone. At any time. The new you, you're selective. You're not unkind. You're just no longer emotionally bankrupting yourself for temporary approval. And that shift changes everything. Suddenly you realize you have more time. You feel lighter. You're less anxious. You're not waiting for people to respond. You're no longer measuring your worth by how many people need you. You are not empty. You are full of your own presence. A quiet revolution. You didn't scream. You didn't argue. You didn't demand anything. You just said no, not this time, and stuck to it. That is the quiet revolution. It doesn't always make noise, but it makes space. Space for your true self, your real voice, your actual needs. And in that space, you begin to live. Final thoughts for part 2. This is your reminder. You don't lose people when you set boundaries. You lose the illusion of who they were. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors, and only those meant to walk with you will knock and wait. You no longer need to perform, prove, or please your way into being seen. The right people will honor your limits. The wrong ones will expose themselves through your silence. Either way, you win. Up next, in part 3, the mirror of true connection, where we confront the difference between love and control, presence and possession, and why some people only love you when they can use you. There's a strange moment that happens when you stop overextending yourself. At first, the silence is terrifying. No buzzing phone. No last-minute favors. No. Can I talk to you for a second? Just space. And in that space, something becomes painfully obvious. The people who were always around when you were useful suddenly vanish. 2 types of people show up in your life. When you create boundaries, the divide becomes clear. You realize there are really only 2 types of people. Those who were attracted to your availability. Those who were connected to your essence. The first group loved what you gave. The second loved who you are. And when the giving slows down, the first group leaves. That's not a loss. That's a revelation. Love or control. Many relationships you thought were built on love were actually built on control. But it was disguised as sweetness. I just love how you're always there for me. You're the only one who understands me. I don't know what I'd do without you. Sounds beautiful, right? But try saying no once. Suddenly, you're selfish, inconsiderate, cold. What changed? Nothing. You just stopped giving them what they expected. And in that tiny act of resistance, their real expectations are exposed. They weren't in love with you. They were in love with the version of you that made their life easier. When your worth is tied to how useful you are, you become a mirror. People project onto you what they need: a therapist, a cheerleader, a savior, a shoulder, a distraction. But when you remove the mirror, when you stop reflecting their needs and start reflecting your own, they get uncomfortable. They call it you changing. But it's not change. It's clarity. A few stories you might recognize. Let's zoom in on this mirror dynamic through a few real-life scenarios. 1. The friend who always needs you until you need them. You listen to every breakdown. You show up during every crisis. But when you finally say, "I'm going through something," they disappear, or worse, make it about them. They loved your support, but they were never equipped to return it. 2. The partner who calls you distant when you set a boundary. They loved how you never said no, how you never pushed back. But now that you've found your voice, they're pulling away because your strength threatens their control. 3. The family member who only calls when they need something. There's no connection, just a transaction. You're not a person, you're a resource. And when the resource closes, so does the relationship. These aren't just disappointing. They're awakening. Boundaries filter, not destroy. The most important truth in this part of the journey is this: boundaries don't ruin relationships. They reveal the quality of them. If someone disappears, when you stop overgiving, they weren't in your life. They were in your loop. They were orbiting your usefulness, not your essence. And when you break the pattern, you break the illusion, the paradox of distance. Here's something wild. The moment you stop chasing connection, real connection starts finding you. Why? Because when you're no longer performing availability, you start vibrating in authenticity. And authenticity repels the needy, but it attracts the healthy. It confuses the ones who used to rely on your self-erasure, but it inspires the ones who are also walking their own path. Your no becomes a filter. Your silence becomes a mirror. Your boundary becomes a lighthouse. Who stays, who disappears? Here's what you'll notice. The people who disappear when you need space were never emotionally invested. The ones who respect your distance, those are your real tribe. The ones who grow with you not because of what you give. Those are the keepers. And guess what? There might not be many of them, but the few who remain, they love the real you. Not the mask, not the role, not the availability. You. You don't need to be needed. This is the hardest emotional truth of all. You don't need to be needed to be loved. Let that sink in. Most of us were raised believing that if we're not useful, we're not lovable. So we try harder. We give more. We sacrifice everything. But that only attracts people who love dependency, not connection. When you stop feeding that pattern, the emptiness shows up, but so does the healing. Because real love doesn't come from sacrifice. It comes from presence. Not obligation, not fixing, not saving. Just showing up as you are and being received. From being the mirror to facing yourself. There comes a day where you realize you've been so busy reflecting others' needs that you've forgotten your own face. So you step away. You sit in silence. You ask, what do I need? What do I love? What brings me peace? And the answer isn't always easy, because for years you were trained to abandon those questions. But as the false connections fall away, a new voice rises, the voice of yourself. And in that voice, you hear something rare. Not a command to serve, not a cry to save, but a whisper that says, come home to yourself. Final thoughts for part 3. This is the truth most people are too afraid to admit. They weren't who you thought they were. You were in love with a reflection, not a relationship. But here's the beautiful side of that realization. Now you're ready for something real. When you stop being the mirror, you create space for people who don't need you to disappear in order to love you. And when those people come, you'll know it's different. Because for the first time you'll feel seen, not for what you give, but for who you are. Up next in part 4. Becoming the person who doesn't need to be needed. A guide to releasing the addiction to usefulness, stepping into full authenticity, and learning to stand strong in your quiet power, even when it means standing alone. Part 4. Becoming the person who doesn't need to be needed. There's a quiet moment that arrives after the storm of withdrawal, disappointment, and exposure. You're no longer constantly checking your phone, no longer spinning in anxiety about who's upset, no longer shrinking to maintain the illusion of being there. You've stepped out of the role of the rescuer, the fixer, the emotional servant. And now something new begins. You become someone who doesn't need to be needed to feel valuable, healing the wound of conditional worth. For many of us, the addiction to being needed was born in childhood. We learned early on that love came when we were useful, that being quiet, helpful, and self-sacrificing earned approval, that the more we erased ourselves, the safer we became. So we became the emotional caretaker, the peacekeeper, the overfunctioner, not because we wanted power, but because we wanted to be safe. But here's the truth, that safety was survival, not love. And the only way to break that pattern is to grieve it. Grieve the years you spent proving yourself. Grieve the connections that were never mutual. Grieve the love you thought you earned, but was never truly given, and then let it go. From performance to presence. The moment you stop performing value through usefulness, You become something rare, present, not on call, not reactive, not addicted to fixing. Just here, alive, whole, centered in your being. You stop living in other people's crises and start responding to your own needs with tenderness. You stop rushing to save and start building something worth saving inside you, redefining your identity. Who are you when no one needs anything from you? That question used to terrify you, because for so long, your identity was fused to being the strong one, the available one, the reliable one. But now there's space to answer differently. You're not just the one who shows up. You're the one who knows when not to. You're not just the helper. You're the human. You're not just the rock. You're the ocean deep alive, changing. You are no longer just an emotional resource. You are a soul with rhythm, boundaries, and breath. Letting go of the fear. They'll leave if I stop serving. Let's say it clearly. Yes, some people will leave, but they were never really there. If your presence was only valued when you erased yourself, their love was never real. It was role-based, and roles are replaceable. But the self, your true self, is not. When you show up fully with needs, limits, and truth, the right people will lean in, not recoil. The right ones will say, "Thank you for being real. I love you for who you are, not what you do for me. Your no doesn't threaten me. It makes me respect you more." Those people exist, but you'll never meet them until you stop dimming your light to serve the wrong crowd. Emotional exercises to practice this shift. Let's get practical. Here are 5 real-world ways to embody this new self. 1. Delay your response. When someone messages you with urgency, pause. Wait 30 minutes. Observe your anxiety and theirs. You'll learn volumes in that silence. 2. Practice saying, "Not today." No need for a dramatic excuse. Just, "I won't be able to help today, but I hope things go okay." No apology, no over-explaining. 3. Sit in silence. 1 hour, no phone. Just sit with yourself. Let the discomfort rise, then fall. This is where your power builds. 4. Write a boundary promise letter to yourself. Example, "I will no longer betray my energy for temporary approval. I deserve peace even if it disappoints others." 5. Stop chasing closure with those who disrespected your limits. Their reaction was your answer. How life starts to shift. As you live this way, something magical happens. Your anxiety decreases. You stop feeling resentful. You wake up without the pressure to earn your place. Your circle shrinks, but becomes sacred. You have more time to create, reflect, rest, and be. Because now, you are no longer running a rescue mission. You are living your actual life. And that life is built not on the illusion of being needed, but on the truth of being whole. Quiet power, loud availability. Let's end with this. The world will always celebrate the loudest voice, the biggest helper, the most self-sacrificing soul. But real power, it's quiet, it's still, it's not always available, but it's always real. And that's who you're becoming. Not the person who rushes to every call, but the one who chooses with wisdom and authenticity where your energy goes. You are no longer a servant of other people's chaos. You are the guardian of your own peace. And that is your greatest transformation. Final message to the viewer. To the one watching this, who's tired of being everyone's emotional lifeline, you are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to disappear from conversations that cost your soul. And when you do, you will not lose love. You will lose dependency, manipulation, and emotional debt. And in their place, you will gain yourself. Because the ones who truly love you, they won't leave when you stop serving. They'll finally meet you. Let me ask you this. What changed? when you stopped being instantly available for everyone else? Who stayed and who showed you their true face? Tell me below. Your story might just help someone else find the courage to step back and step into themselves. Yes,